Station, everyone. Happy new comic book day. Happy Whiplash Wednesday with the PCP Army Bad Batch. Yeah, that's right. We're going at it for another freaking week, and we're not going to stop, guys. You guys might as well get used to us. We're going to be dropping videos every Wednesday because that's our spot. PCP Army Bad Batch, Whiplash Wednesdays forever. Guys, it's always a fun ride. Started over at Nick Comic Culture's look at cadets, toys, and comics, a little view of what they have in their store for toys and what they are providing on this amazing new comic book day. And that leads us to right now. I'll get to the rest of what's coming for Whiplash Wednesday after this video, because I have a special guest today. He's just broken out into doing YouTube. He's done a little bit of podcasts, just a little bit, but he's broken out and he's doing reviews with like some of the greats, like Nick Comic Culture, John's Comics with Kids, Robbie from Pop Culture Philosophers, and the mayor of comics himself. No good. But enough of me talking about him. Let's bring him out and hear it from him himself. Let me bring out Verno, the Cerebro.
Station, my friend. Yeah, that was great. I saw my name. What's going on, man? Thank you so much for having me on, dude. I'm stoked to do this.
Oh, thanks for coming on, man. I'm interested in to hear your journey into collecting comics, and I could see some statues and some toys behind you, so I'm interested in delving into that a little bit in this conversation.
Hell yeah.
But man, guys, for the people that don't know a lot about Verno, why don't you just let the guests or the people knowing watching a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, for sure, man. A couple years ago, I started a podcast. It was really X-Men focused at the beginning, but since then, I've kind of like opened up into the wider world of comic books. So I'm doing the weekly reviews, come out usually on Wednesday, non-spoiler reviews on like a variety of books from a variety of publishers, and then on Sundays I get together with a bunch of awesome guests, a bunch of people that are members of this YouTube comic book community, and we get together, we kind of break down the books in a little bit more of an in-depth, lightly more of a spoilery kind of way every Sunday on the Comic Book Breakdown Show. And also, I did just add a new series that I'm doing. We'll put up an episode of the first episode of the new series, Comic Book Catch-Up, where we're going back throughout like the history of comic books and trying to just catch up on a lot of the best runs throughout history. So we started with Matt Fraction's Hawkeye run, nice and timely, coming out. Well, by the time this comes out, it's already out, and you guys are hopefully enjoying the new Hawkeye series, and hopefully it's good and that it was worth it. So yeah, we did Hawkeye by Matt Fraction. So that's about the extent of what I do, man.
That's awesome, man. I look forward to watching that.
Cool, man. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Honestly, it was one of the most fun episodes that I think I've done on the Hawkeye one. It was a really good one.
So let's jump right into it. How did you get into reading and collecting comics?
It's funny, man. I thought a lot about this, and I've answered this question a few times, and then I realized like I got to go deeper. I got to go further back, because I think for me it all began with Shel Silverstein. I don't know if you know anything about Shel Silverstein or these books, but my grandma used to read them to us. They're basically like poetry, but with pictures on the inside here. Do you know, by the way, like, do you know Shel Silverstein? Do you know these books, A Light in the Attic and Where the Sidewalk Ends? Anything like that?
No, I do not.
No?
I've never heard of them.
And this is one of those things, like, I really had to think about it. So yeah, it kind of did begin there. Like, I loved these books growing up, you know, art and words together. It's not really a comic book, but it might be the source. But then after that, a little bit closer to our nerdy comic books are Calvin and Hobbes. You ever mess with Calvin and Hobbes when you were a kid?
No, I have not.
No? You know the little tiger and the little blonde kid? He's like a Dennis the Menace.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Like in the comic strips in the newspapers.
Right. Yeah, I used to buy like the books, though. Like they would compile all the news strips and put them in books. But it's another thing I didn't like think about. I hadn't thought about Calvin and Hobbes in like almost 30 years. But then I was thinking about like, you know, that's kind of like the first comics that I was into before I later got into all of the standard stuff that everybody that is 37 years old is going to answer. X-Men the animated series, Batman the animated series, and all that. But that's really where it started, if I really go back and look at it, which is which is I don't know, it's interesting to think about like what kind of impression that made on me, the art and the words together. But and then if I can go further, the other like big thing is The Force Awakens. And this is another one like that really like cranked up everything. The first time I saw a trailer for The Force Awakens, I was like, I don't know if I'd ever seen any of the Star Wars movies like start to finish, honestly. And I was like, I want to catch up on Star Wars before this movie comes out. For whatever reason, I wanted to be a part of it. And I got obsessed with Star Wars for a while. I haven't watched one in quite a while now since I got more into comic books. But looking back on it, that's what it was, man. It was The Force Awakens and this Funko Pop. This very one right here. It just, I became like obsessed with collecting Funko Pops. And that led into all this craziness that you see behind me. I had a whole room full of these, like literally like thousands of dollars worth of them, because I was just straight up obsessed with them. And that led me into Hot Toys. But it's funny, I've said this before, but it was buying toys. I was more of a collector at first. But then I was like, well, I don't want to be a poser, so I better get my nerd knowledge up for that. And I'd be out hunting for Star Wars pops. Then I look over and I'm like, that Hulk pop looks pretty dope. Like maybe I'll pick that up. But then I wanted to watch the movies to kind of, again, not be a poser. And it ended up fueling like, it ended up getting me more into the comic books and the content inside of them than the collectibles themselves. Because I haven't bought a toy in like a year, honestly. Like I've kind of dropped off my collecting like massively in the past year or so, getting more into the actual reading comics.
Yeah, I collect Beast Wars, of course, but and Transformers a bit, but just that type of Transformers. But I like to go for the older toys that are pretty cheap, like the Spawn toys. Like I know some of them mostly break, but they're still cool to have in that. So
yeah, no, for sure. It's fun, man. It's just fun to have something to collect. Like I used to have a job where I could be on the computer searching stuff all day, like while I was working. So it was just nice to have something to kind of set your mind on, going around eBay, looking for what's coming out, just something to obsess over. Really, that's what I need. Like now it's comic books and podcasting, but I need something to sit and just have my mind going on all day, you know?
Yeah, and that was kind of the downfall of like COVID happening, because usually we had a lot of TV shows that came out and we could watch those, keep our minds busy in that. And that's how a lot of people got into comic collecting, was because they had no TV to watch. They had nothing to do. They were stuck inside. So why not read a comic book, go to your local library or get a trade paperback and start delving into some of this content that you love to watch on TV. Like for me, it was like the CW shows.
Right. Yeah, no, I just I saw you mentioning that. I got into the CW shows, then I kind of got out of them. Flash was probably my favorite. What was your favorite CW show?
Yeah, I would have to say The Flash as well. I really love Stargirl, though, now that it is a CW show for the second season. And that was very, very well done, in my opinion.
I've heard that, man. I'm going to have to go back and check it out. I wonder, it's probably on Netflix, right?
I think it's the first season's on HBO Max, and then the second season's on the CW app.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
And in Canada, it's on Prime Video.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I think I've heard Robbie say good things about Stargirl. I was just talking with the Mark and Jasmine from Geeks Unleashed. I just don't watch much television recently. I spend a lot of time reading comic books, and then it's funny because it seemed like around like the Breaking Bad era, everything was about TV. Like TV shows were way better than movies at the time. And that might still be the case. Maybe I'm not watching the right TV shows, but I just find myself wanting to watch more films as of recently, especially like older ones. I'm kind of going, there was like a long period of my life where I didn't watch old movies. I was like, the acting is bad and this and that. You know what I mean? I was just like a snob about it. Now I've really dropped all that and went back and started to enjoy a lot of the 80s classics, you know?
I think it's because we're so on like all of this great cinematic universe. Like the CGI is better, like it looks better than it did back then. And then now that we're older, we can appreciate it for what it was back then, though. Because I know I didn't watch Alien for the longest time, and then I think it was like a year ago, last January, I watched like the first Alien movie, and then I just continued on with it, and I just loved the series. I was like, why didn't I watch this earlier?
Right, I know, dude. I'm the same way. There's a lot of things. We just did I was on for Dylan's Horror Show. We talked Exorcist, and to me, that's kind of the perfect example. There's certain movies that you would watch as a kid and be like, no, that sucks, and that just kind of stuck. Oh, that sucks. For 20 years, you think The Exorcist sucks, but I was just too young for it, I think. Or now I'm starting to go back and revisit a lot of the stuff from my childhood and re-enjoying it. You know, even the stuff that I did like that I haven't seen in forever. You got to go back and just kind of view it as an adult. Obviously, it's a totally different experience. You can analyze it a little more and all that.
Yeah, I agree. So moving on to like, you said a little bit of how you got into collecting comics, but like you solely moved on to like reading mostly X-Men. Like, where did that journey begin? And like, was it in the 90s or was it Hoxpox? Oh,
it was okay. It was a handful of things. It was initially when I was a boy, Travis. When I was a kid, it was X-Men. It was the 90s X-Men. It was Wolverine, bub. You know, Double Snickton, Gambit, all that, obviously. And I was a pretty big X-Men comic fan when I was young. Got out of the game. Is another similar story that everyone else has, and didn't get back into it forever until I always credit this giant size one, but really, really it was Morrison's X-Men. A buddy gave me Morrison's X-Men run as an omnibus, and the first time I read it, I only liked it. I didn't even like fully appreciate it because of the difference of the 90s look. You know what I mean? It's just how differently it felt. Like the first read through, I was like, oh, this is cool. But when I got that, and I've said this a bunch of times, but I didn't know like that it existed, that you could go back to the giant size era and start from the beginning of Wolverine and Storm and Colossus and Nightcrawler's story and read the whole run. I didn't even understand how comic books, like the industry, worked. I remember a friend of mine mentioning, well, basically, I'll just tell you what I thought. I didn't realize like, oh, a writer would get on a run and write it for 30 issues, or especially back in the day, like that they would do long runs like that. I thought it was just some random person writes each issue and draws each issue. But you know what I mean? I didn't understand that you could just buy an omnibus and read a full story, kind of.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, it's great now that we have that too, like to trade paperbacks so we can go back and read as well.
For sure.
Because
and Marvel
like Marvel Unlimited as well, because like it is really hard to get that very first issue of Giant Size X-Men.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I never would, you know.
So like, how did you jump out? Like, I know you said you read a lot of the X-Men at the start. Like, when did you start expanding out from there?
It was pretty much, I wasn't even going to comic shops. It was like towards the end of Jonathan Hickman's House of X, Powers of X, that I think I like started picking them up, the back issues, as it was about to wrap up. And I just got obsessed with it. Like me and my buddy, we just couldn't quit talking about Hoxpox. That's how we started the podcast. We were just going to kind of ape off of what this other podcast called The Danger Room, what they do, where they started at X-Men #1 back in '63, and they just read straight through it. Each episode is based on one issue. And I talked my buddy into doing that with House of X, Powers of 10, and then The Dawn of X. And then a little bit into it, basically I was going to the comic shop, you know what I mean? Like picking up the new books. That slowly got me into picking up more new books. And then honestly, it's Rockin' Rob, man. It was watching his reviews and kind of getting more into pop culture philosophers, getting recommendations from Robbie. And really, that's a huge part of it, was that expanded the types of comics that I was into. And to at this point, and that's the other thing, is the Dawn of X, those X books, in my opinion, and a lot of people's opinions, they've dipped off quite a bit. You know what I mean? So I started to realize, like, oh, a lot of these other books are as good, if not significantly better, than these books I'm spending all this time talking about. Like, let's talk about those instead. So that's kind of what's happened. I've expanded out into talking about everything. You know what I mean? Whether I should be or not, someone only in the game for a couple of years, that's what I'm doing. So it's been working out so far. It's been a ton of fun. It's more fun to talk about a bunch of different topics rather than X-Men every week. Like, it's easier to grow a podcast that way, to be more niche, but it'll drive you crazy. And then you end up, with fake enthusiasm about stuff that you're really not that excited about. So I'd rather not go that route. I see a lot of that out there,
Yeah, it probably would get tiresome just talking about the same thing over and over again, especially, yeah, like you said, if you're not enjoying it, and it's just it's not that fun anymore.
Right. And then honestly, and this is like no offense to like any fanboys out there, but when your podcast is so niche, like that's what you're gonna develop more of like a fanboy type of audience where I don't really care that much. I don't consider myself. I'm just more interested in the stories and kind of talking about them rather than like obsessing over Marvel comics or the characters. And you know what I mean? There's two different like there's a bunch of different types of fans, and I'm more into like the broader, you know what I mean, the less fanboy type of content, I guess.
So you did say like you did a podcast for the longest time, and then you just recently, not too long ago, probably a couple months ago, broke out into doing YouTube. Like what inspired that?
It's funny because I have a partner originally. We were excuse me, we were doing the show together, and then he was not interested anymore. So I did the show by myself for like 60 episodes, just trucking along, just me. And then I started reaching out to people to have guests on. And it was like I'd had like a bunch of guests on before I realized like I do a podcast, but I'm getting all of my guests from YouTube. And I had to ask myself why. But the reason is because there's very few podcasts out there that are like one-man shows. You know what I mean? It's usually two people. And I kind of enjoy this, like the one-on-one conversations. Like they flow a little bit better, especially via the internet. So, and that's what it was. I realized that on YouTube, there's a ton of one-man acts. You know what I mean? Like most people, it's just one guy running a channel that collabs with a bunch of different people like yourself. So that's kind of what it was. It was, and then having all of those people on, I'll mention Justin from No Good. A bunch of people had told me like, why don't you just do this on YouTube too? But Justin kind of laid it out as like, dude, you can just do exactly what you're doing and strip the audio off of it and put that up on the podcast and put the video on YouTube. It seems it's a no-brainer now, but I was intimidated by the technology of the whole thing. Like at first, just figuring everything out. Like I'm not super tech savvy. I can figure stuff out. You know what I mean? I've got the internet, I've got the YouTubes. I can figure out how to do it, but it's intimidating at first to not only reach out to strangers and have them come on and do your show with you, but just all the technology that you got to learn before that, which
I don't think I'm that good at the technology. I'm still learning how to edit. So, yeah. And finding the right software that's free to edit.
Right. And that's another thing is like, I like it. Like I like to edit. It's two different things to edit a video to editing a podcast, like audio only, but I can really like get into that and sink my teeth and spend like way more time than I should on editing because I actually do kind of enjoy it. It's super tedious, but it's just fun to make stuff like sound and look better. I don't know. For me, it's something that I can really like spend a lot of time on.
I really do enjoy your editing. And then when you have guests on, I'm not sure what you use, but like the whole when somebody's talking, it's on them and then it's back to you type deal. I really enjoy that as well.
Cool. It's just it's Google Meet. I didn't know it. The first episode I did like that. I did it with Nick, Comic Culture. Shout out to you. And afterwards, it's one of those we just recorded it on Google Meet. I'd never tried it that way. It was an experiment. And then I checked it out. At first, I was like, oh, no, like it's doing this thing where it goes back and forth. And then I watched it for a few minutes. I'm like, damn, this is awesome. Like I would have paid someone to do this. You know what I mean? It's just a nice technology that they have at Google Meet. It works out pretty well, especially, again, for just two people. I think if I had 3 or 4 guests on, it could get a little like wonky, especially people talk over each other a little bit more. But so far, so good for sure. Thank you. I'm glad that you like it because it was something I wasn't so sure about at first because you don't see a lot of that in the comic community.
Yeah, it's like I know like you have to like focus like your eyes like this way or this way whenever you have 2 guests on, but like you can just look straight at the screen and just know who's talking.
Right.
and
Right.
and that. So I may have to try that out sometime.
Right. No, it's cool. You do have to pay a small fee. It's like, you know what I mean, $8.99 a month or whatever to have the ability to record on Google Meet, because you can have the meetings for free, but if you want to record them, there's a small fee, just like StreamYard.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that would be a little cheaper than StreamYard, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that. So moving on from, let's talk a little bit about the toys. You got a little bit into it. You said you showed your first pop ever. Like, when was that? When did you pick that up?
I was looking to do it recently to try and figure it out, because I'm like, man, my life has gotten weird. Like, I've come a long way since then. But I forget the exact time, but I think that Force Awakens trailer came out in late 2014, 2015, sometime around there. And shortly after, I remember joking about it at the time. It's like, you get into Star Wars, and the next thing you know, you're collecting toys. Like, it really does happen that way. And that's pretty much what it was, man. It was a certain Christmas. I had a few of them, and then my fiance got me like 10 of them for Christmas. And then it was on. You know what I mean? There's like an OCD part of, I bet almost all of us that are watching this, or, you know what I mean? Everybody that's collecting anything, there's that little bit of OCD that, like, oh, I've got, you know, X-Men number 25, number 27, and 28. I got to get 26. You know what I mean? It's the same thing with toys. Like, all right, I've got a Stormtrooper. I need Vader. All right, you got Vader. You're going to need the Emperor. You got Luke. Where's Leia? Like, you know what I mean? So it just grew. And then eventually I thought I needed every single Star Wars pop ever. And it got it got crazy. But you can sell these things. And it's honestly, that's kind of fun too. Like, I don't get too attached to a lot of the stuff. You know what I mean? Like, I'm attached to it at the time, but at one point I'll just do a big sell and just start selling things and try and sell them at the right time to make a little bit of money off of it, or to not lose that much money. You know what I mean? But do you sell much stuff on eBay? You ever play with that?
Me, a little bit, and it's mostly like comic books, like I've already read and I don't really care for in my collection, and that because like I have a limited type of books that I keep in my collection on my PC. Other than that, as long as I read them and they're going for, like, even if you're just selling them for like $2 or $3 online and stuff, make your money back at least a little bit, and like pay for the hobby.
Right, exactly. If at least it's something. I was just talking about recently. If you're into digital only, like, you're still paying full price for the books, which I think is crazy. I don't understand how they're still getting away with that. But you can never sell them for any amount of money. It's nice to be able to collect these comic books on New Comic Book Day, and then eventually you can turn around and sell the run. It makes it a little bit easier. You've got the entire run. But I will say, like, from my experience, you are getting less back than I had hoped for. Like, I was thinking you'd get a little bit more than what you actually get for especially these newer comic books. Like, but at the same time, the way I look at it, if you collect a run long enough, it gives you a better chance of getting that one key issue in there that's going to help you make your money back. But maybe that's a mentality that's just going to lead me to be broke. I don't know. Like, you know what I mean? But that was kind of my thought process. But I don't know. The newer comics go for pretty cheap when you try to resell them, depending on what they are and when you try to sell them, I've noticed. But still, at least it's something.
Yeah, at least it's something. I haven't really sold. I think I sold one Spawn figure, and it was like kind of I had kind of two of them, one with the mask on and then one with the hamburger face, and I ended up selling that one with the hamburger face, and I got my money back for that. I sold it for like $60.
Nice. Yeah.
And that, like, it was lower than what it said it was going for, but I was like, I don't care. I'll sell it faster in that. So.
And like I said, I kind of enjoy just, like, you know what I mean? Something you'll just get into a mode, or I will, where I start selling everything. And it's fun. I enjoy doing that too. It's kind of like the anti-collecting. I don't know. It's still doing something. You're active. You're getting, oh, here we go. Ding, ding, ding. We're selling stuff. So that's fun too. I enjoy it all. Here, let me show you this guy. This is, because at first I started just like newer stuff and stuff that, like, I wasn't into Star Wars when I was a kid, but I was into this guy. This is probably one of my favorite Hot Toys. Arnold. Of course, he comes with your look at that leg and everything. Very highly
Nice.
detailed. Yeah, these are Hot Toy 1/6 scale collectible figures that you could buy from Sideshow. That guy's one of my favorites for sure.
I love the stands. Like, I don't think I'll ever get rid of, like, there's certain things. I mostly unbox most of my Spawn figures, but they're from the 90s and the packaging isn't that great anyway. That's why I'm getting them for like $5. So I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to play around with them, make a shelf out of it. But like my Beast Wars stuff, I'll probably never get rid of.
Right.
And then especially that stuff from like Bullseye Bob, like that's from my childhood right there. So it's pretty cool to have.
Well, that's kind of what I've noticed is like I've got all this stuff, and then a lot of people collect is the more nostalgia stuff, like what they were into when they were kids. And that's what I've noticed. And like I got like a Matrix one over there. I was like 16 when the Matrix came out, but whatever. I was a kid compared to where I'm at now. But yeah, I kind of want to sell some more of this stuff and kind of go back and get more of my childhood stuff. Get some Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in there. Get some Beavis and Butthead up in that. You know, stuff that actually takes you back. Blend it in with this stuff. But I've got a mentality, like I said, like I'll get into, like I'm fixated on one thing, and I'll just got to get all of that. So I rarely spread stuff around in my collection. It's too homogenized, if you will.
I get that. Every time I come across the Spawn figure, I'm like, I have to get it. So like, and sometimes it like even affects like my pull list for the week. Like, oh, I'll drop that comic. I'll get it next week, right. And that. So it's like I got to get this figure now. So I ended up recently. I should have it by the time this airs, but I got a Malbosia figure coming. So that's What's from that? Spawn. That's the demon that Al Simmons makes a deal with and becomes the Spawn. That's the demon that holds his soul. Malbosia.
Okay. I've only read like one issue of Spawn. I've never got into there. I need to, and that's part of the reason why I'm starting the new series, Comic Book Catch Up, is because there's just so much. There's so much to catch up on. It could be overwhelming. So I've been wanting to like map out a path for me to read through stuff because, you know what I mean? If you actually have goals, especially for me, if I know I'm going to create content on it, then I'm going to read it. So it's really for me, but hopefully the show benefits other people too, but just something to like guarantee that I'm going to read all this stuff. So I'm looking forward to at one point getting into Spawn for sure. Like so much there.
I grew up with like not like reading Spawn comics, but like the TV show on HBO and then the movie. At the time, the movie, it was fantastic. I know looking back at it now and the cape at the time, as a kid, I loved it. I thought it looked cool, but looking at it now, I'm just like, could have been better. But having read that like the compendium with Big Herm, like this is something I never thought I would experience, like just jumping into reading a comic book with a friend and like reviewing it and just talking about it. Because we didn't talk about it for the entire week, and we read 5 issues that week and got together and talked about those 5 issues.
That's awesome.
So that definitely means something to me. So Spawn is definitely huge into me right now, like huge part of my life and stuff, because it holds that nostalgia, plus it holds that like friendship that was built over reading it. Like you could share it with a friend. It was different.
Well, I know exactly what you're talking about because it's similar to my experience going through Hoxpox with my buddy at the beginning of our podcast. Like I'll never not think about that as like, you know, we bonded a lot. It was like we were creating something together. It was cool. So I understand 100% what you're saying. Let me ask you, are that Spawn compendium, if I'm saying that correctly, is that black and white or are those colored? I remember seeing them when they were coming out and I didn't pick it up.
Oh, it's colored.
Okay. That's cool.
Yeah, it's fully colored. The only difference is like, you know, like collected editions have like the cover art and stuff in it. This doesn't have it. Like it just goes straight, says like this is issue 2, you're going into issue 2 and stuff. It doesn't have any of the cover art.
Right. They just try and make it as cheap as they can, which is nice, dude. Like they should be options for that. If correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know if you know, but I think before that compendium came out, there really wasn't a good way to collect early Spawn. Like there isn't a nice hardcover that's in print that you could pick up. Like it's kind of tricky to get that. That's a new thing, that compendium, right?
Yeah, I think so. And like the volume 2 is coming out this, like, should be out this month at some point. I forget when it is. And I remember hearing Todd McFarlane say, like, he didn't want to overwhelm people by putting it out right away. Like, he wanted to space it out. But then people were like, no, put it out. We're done with this and stuff. Because me and Herm have been done for like a good 6 months. Or no, we haven't been going for that long. Like 3 months, I think. Because we finished it within like 2 months.
Really? Good read, though. Yeah, I mean, clearly. Seems like you enjoyed the hell out of it. You clearly recommend it. I should jump on it?
Oh, yeah. I highly recommend it. It opens up a lot of doors of figuring out who Al Simmons was, and it even has a lot of the earlier 90s characters in there, like Chapel.
Oh, that's cool.
Just showing up as well. And like a lot of the characters in the 90s, they transferred over with each other. Like you'd see Spawn in like a Shadowhawk book, or some of the Youngbloods in a Spawn book. Like I'm pretty sure Badrock was in the Spawn book. And yeah, you get to find out a lot of the characters that are actually showing up now in Spawn, with like Kygor and them.
Are you jumping on the new stuff, the King Spawn and Gunslinger Spawn and all that?
Yeah.
Nice.
Dude. I haven't read them yet, but I should be getting them soon.
Nice. That's cool, man. Yeah, there's what I thought about it, especially because I was doing the reviews, but I was like, man, I'm already buying so much stuff and I've never read any Spawn. I'd heard people saying, oh, you could just jump on now. Just go ahead and give it a shot. But I've heard good things too, but I was just like, you know what? It's a whole nother universe. I feel the same way about Spider-Man right now. I've never read too much Spider-Man, and I wasn't reading Spencer's run. And then since he's off, I'm like, all right, I'm going to jump on. But they're doing, the way that they do things, like, okay, it's issue number 78, and then there's issue number 78, Point Bay. Whatever is this? And just like that turned me off. Just the way that they market and the way that they squeeze every penny out of Spider-Man. I'm like, do I even want to jump in on this? Or should I just go back and read? And that's what a lot of it is. Reading so many new comics, it's taken away my time from reading old comics and catching up. So it's like, and it's valuable to read those old comics. Not only are they awesome, but they help you enjoy the new comics. So it's a tough balance for a new reader. You know what I mean? Or especially like new was in the past couple years. So much of this is new to me. So many characters and creators, there's a lot to catch up on. Same for you too. See, I had assumed you were in the game forever, bro. You know what I mean? Just because I see you in the chat. That's where I met you, is in Robbie's chat. And I just assumed you'd been a lifelong comic fan, but you're pretty new too, right?
Yeah, I was just trying to learn, and like I said, like I use the library as a resource a lot of the time. That's how I was able to read a lot of these comics. But it's always fun talking with other people about being able to talk to them about comics and that, because like I have Sister Joe to talk about this comic with. And maybe it's not like on screen or anything, but it's just that whole being able to like review it together. Maybe she missed something, maybe I missed something, and being able to talk about it.
Oh, there really is a Sister Joe? I thought you were just screwing with Brother Joe. There's really a Sister Joe?
Yeah, that's his wife.
Oh, okay. I thought you were just joking with him, man. Okay, that's great. That's good.
Yeah. And then having Big Herm to talk about, like, whenever I first got the compendium, I looked at it and I was like, oh my God, that's so much.
Right.
Because it's like 50 issues and it's like that big. And then just having that, and it was kind of overwhelming at first because like I was getting a lot more comics at that time, but I've kind of taken the time and just said, you know what, maybe I'll pick that up at my library. Maybe I'll pick it up as a trade. Mm-hmm. And that, and just delve into some older comics like Middle West, like Man-Eaters. Like I'm enjoying Man-Eaters: The Curse, so that gave me the driving point to go read Man-Eaters.
Nice.
And able to use my library for that. So it's definitely good to sometimes, especially if you're not doing reviews for them, mm-hmm. You don't need to pick up everything.
Right, for sure, exactly. Yeah, I mean, do you find yourself liking superhero comics more or indie comics more? Just kind of diving into it, because I think like a lot of people will kind of start leaning more towards the indie the more you experiment with it, the more you check them out, right?
Yeah, I'm definitely like in the indie type of side of things, but like I do like some hero type aspects. Like I'm loving Robin, and then
Mm-hmm.
Harley Quinn wouldn't be considered a superhero book, kind of like an anti-hero
Whatever.
book, but like
I mean, I'm talking about art where they're jumping around and kicking people in the face, and you know what I mean. That's superhero enough for me. That kind of feel, you know what I mean. Which I love. Don't get me wrong. I do love that, but I was just never aware of how good indie comics are. There's so many amazing stories being told in indie comics, and it's a little bit easier to get into. You know what I mean? There's not all this knowledge that you feel like you need to have, even though you don't really need that prior knowledge. Like, see, you're reading Daredevil's run, you're going to get most of it, but there's going to be times that you're not going to get it. And that, like, I don't know, it creates some kind of like reader's anxiety for me where it's like, oh, I'm getting lost. You know what I mean? Did you experience that at all? It's like, am I supposed to know
yeah,
this? You know?
there is some parts like I didn't like jumping into books and stuff that you're just like, all right, I don't get what they're talking about there and stuff. Like
Right.
I think I jumped into Batman like after Alfred died. So I'm
Right.
like that was a whole new experience. Like it's the thing about DC comics though. Like there's so much DC animated series that tie in with the comic books that are like connected with it that you can go back and find this information just by watching that. And
Right.
that's why like I had some of that knowledge coming into collect like reading DC. Like I had some of that knowledge already for these characters.
That's what I've told quite a few people, like, specifically for DC. Their animated universe makes it kind of easier to get into DC like as a universe because of like how in depth they went in Justice League at Justice League Unlimited. You were introduced to so many characters through that and through the movies, and their movies are so good. I saw you and Flash talking about it on the show last week, but I agree. It makes it a little bit easier to, you know what I mean? You at least have some prior knowledge of these characters jumping in than more so the, but then again, I feel like DC, I wonder if you experienced this or people out there in the chat, but like DC tends to throw a little bit more of their like D-level characters at you more frequently than Marvel does. Or maybe it's just because of the Marvel and DC books that I'm reading. But Marvel, you tend to get more of the heavy hitters more consistently, where DC, there's always some random dude that I'm like, I have no idea who this cat is. But also you could Wikipedia stuff. It's not, you know what I mean? And that could be fun too, just to go ahead and look into it yourself. And it's not that hard to figure out who these people are for sure.
Yeah, that's how I'm figuring out what series like The Darkness Within with Eclipse. So I Wikipedia'd like what book should I be reading to
Right.
fill that run to figure out more about this character and stuff, and that's what I've been doing. So I've been getting a lot. Actually, I think there's 25 series in the books, and like you'd never know because like there's annuals that take place from like New Teen Titans to as much as like Hawk World annual like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like those are all tie-ins and they're all connected to this series, and you'd never guess it until like you looked on Wikipedia. It's sometimes hard to navigate as well. So Wikipedia is good, even though people can change the information. But
Right. For the most part, it gets you. You can get by. You could figure out most things. If it's not Wikipedia, then YouTube. You know what I mean? Someone made a video on it for sure.
exactly. So like you were talking about Star Wars a little bit before. Like, did you watch like Star Wars Clone Wars whenever like the animated series when it came out?
Oh yeah. Or no, I don't know about when it came out, but once I got hooked, bro, I went through it all. Which is funny. I kind of forgot about this. I haven't thought about it in a long time, but I watched the movies in a specific order. Like I had done, like I said, I went into them cold. I didn't really. Don't get me wrong. I had seen Star Wars on TV when I was a kid, but I didn't like remember it. Like I was still surprised at the end of Return of the Jedi. Like I didn't anyway. But basically, I watched A New Hope, and then I went back and watched the prequels. So you watch four, and then you're introduced to all of the characters. Then you go back and you get their backstory, and then you go back through it. And then I just watched four again, watch 4, 5, and 6. And I thought that was a really cool way to watch the story. And I recommend it for people. It's something I had seen online. But I say if you're jumping into it, which not many people are, most people have already jumped in. But I thought it was a really cool way to introduce me into it, at least, and it got me obsessed with it. But but yeah, I definitely went back and watched the Clone Wars. I like it, kind of love it at times, but I've never got like way into it in the way that a lot of people are. And I think it's partially because, and it's one of the strengths of it to a lot of people's opinion, is the way it just jumps around. There's not like that much of a focused story going throughout. I mean, there's overarching narratives for a season, but you never get too connected with stuff because of the nature of the TV show, which I know a lot of people do like that, to not just stay focused on Anakin and Ahsoka the whole time. Like they spread the wealth around with the characters that they focus on. But it's great. I mean, I actually like Rebels a little bit more. And that's another thing you and Flash were talking about. I kind of like Rebels more because it is more focused, you know what I mean, on this smaller group that you can kind of get behind. And then plus the aesthetics of Rebels, where you're getting more of the original trilogy aesthetic compared to the Clone Wars, where it looks like the prequels, which still look great, but you know, you're getting all the classic vehicles and everything in Rebels and the stormtroopers and all that. You know, you like Rebels?
I have yet to watch that yet.
Oh,
I have
really?
to go back and watch that. I've watched Clone Wars. I jumped through into that and didn't watch it like right when it first came out. I know Brandon Comics Kings like that. He fell in love with that whenever he was a kid.
Right.
But I've never got into it until later on. I think I started watching it right after The Mandalorian season 1.
Okay. No, that's cool, man. I mean, don't get me wrong. Clone Wars is like, it's almost necessary, like, to help you enjoy the prequels even more. I don't know about necessary, but it adds to the experience of watching the prequels because you get to spend so much time in that era of Star Wars that it's cool. You get to know a lot of the characters way more in depth, especially a lot of the Jedi Council members that you see in passing throughout the prequels. You really get to know them in the Clone Wars, so it's cool. And plus, I dig the animation, and it's probably a better version of Anakin than what we get in the prequels. You know what I mean? Do you like the prequels? Where do you stand prequels to original trilogy?
I do like the prequels and that. The original trilogy was good for the time and that, but like it did fall off just like most Star Wars do. Like come the Empire Strike. Yeah, the Empire Strikes Back, it kind of went downhill a little bit for me.
You mean Return of the Jedi? I hope.
Return of the Jedi, yeah. Empire Strikes Back was the best one. Sorry.
Yeah,
Second one.
I knew what you meant. No, I agree. I still like that last one. I like the ending of it, and that's what I was talking about. At the end of Return of the Jedi, like when Vader, spoiler alert, when Vader takes his helmet off, like I did not know that's the way it was going to end. Like how I made it into my 30s without ever knowing that and still being surprised by the end of it. Like it was like thankful for that. I'd never had that spoiled for me for whatever reason. But yeah, I understand people's problems with Return of the Jedi, and of the original trilogy, it's definitely my least favorite for sure. But it's got, you know what I mean? It's got some amazing iconic moments in there, of course, for sure. You know?
Yeah. And like, I don't know if anybody else can agree, but like Han Solo kind of was, he was like so cool come the beginning and then kind of fell off down near the end. So right. I'm like, he's not that cool anymore.
Well, he's got Gambit syndrome, which maybe I should start calling it Han Solo syndrome. But that's when I'll always use Gambit as the example when you have this cool, edgy, almost a villain. He does heroic stuff. Like, well, it's bad. Basically, Gambit starts out as a thief. He's kind of not a villain, but he's not a good guy. Han Solo, smuggler. Not a villain, but not a good guy at the beginning of A New Hope. Then by the end of A New Hope, he's done the heroic thing. And then in the second one, he's still learning how to be a hero. And then by the third one, he's just boring. Now he's just a regular guy. And that's the same thing that happens with Gambit. It happens with all of those characters like that start out more edgy. And then you reform them. And then what do you do with them after that? And that's why Harrison Ford wanted to kill him. He wanted him to die in Return of the Jedi. Because he wanted it to be like, it would have made it for a better arc for him to just die. It would have made him be more important in the film, I guess. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and he wasn't even supposed to be like cast in the beginning.
Right. He was just like reading like whatever they call it, sitting down for the actors and reading scripts for them.
Yeah, because I think they wanted a younger guy for the role, and Harrison Ford was already older.
Right. That was, I mean, just like it's funny because like of how obsessed with Star Wars I got, like, and how old I am. I'm 37, but I can still look back and clearly remember my first time watching the movie because it was only, not long ago. It was like 7 years ago. And like I remember thinking like, oh my God, Harrison Ford is so much better at acting than everybody else in this film, in my opinion. Like he sticks out to me. It's like, oh, you can see why he's the one that carried on to be a famous movie star afterwards. Like Mark Hamill can blame being typecast as Luke all he wants, but if he was as good as Harrison Ford, he would have continued on and made more movies, I'm sure, because Harrison did,
Yeah, you didn't, for the longest time, you didn't see a lot of Mark Hamill in movies, and that he was just strictly doing TV shows and that, like The Flash 1999 or 1990s Flash TV show with John Wesley Shipp. He was the trickster.
He was in that one too? Because I know he came back.
Yeah.
He was the trickster in the CW show. I didn't know he did one in the 90s. That's cool. With
he
reprised
his role. Yeah.
Right. And that's where we get Flash's dad from the CW was the 90s Flash. I've never seen that. That's interesting. I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah, and like I like how they did a little they brought in that Flash from the 90s into Crisis on Infinite Earths on the CW, like all part of that arc, and like had a scene play too from the 90s show. It was fantastic. That's what like really drove me to it, because like just seeing all of these, everything from DC's like live action all commingled together, like everything from like 1989 Batman onward.
That was in the Crisis on Infinite Earths on the CW. See, like I feel like that's almost when I got out of CW. I don't know why. I don't think it was like because of that. I wasn't revolting against the crossover. I think it was like I wasn't watching them all. And I just kind of, I don't know. I never got into Arrow. Like that was the one, that was part of it. Like I could really only get way into Flash. What was the one with all the villains that were like jumping around through time and flying? What was the villain team one?
It was like a little bit of villains, a little bit of heroes mixed together. It was DC Legends of Tomorrow.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I'm not breaking any news. Those CW shows, they're really corny, but there's a lot of heart in them. That's what I was said about the Flash. The Flash has just got so much heart. Like my fiance, at first she was like, "Why are you watching this corny shit?" And then eventually she got into it. And she's like, "Okay, this is a really sweet show." And that's my favorite aspect of it, is how like the heart that was in the Flash show. But I don't know, Arrow just never did it for me. Legends of Tomorrow, like the acting is just so corny. in that show, it's just
that show just definitely doesn't take itself seriously, especially like now, like because I'm still watching it. It has nothing. It should be just called Legends of Tomorrow because it has some DC characters, but it doesn't have anything to do with anything DC or connected to CW at all. They're actually going like back and talking like with different historical figures and then screwing up the timeline, which then they have to fix. And like, but it's just all fun. It's a show that just definitely doesn't take itself seriously.
Right. And that's one of the things, like you almost have to, I had to like get over that and just be like, oh, okay, kind of exactly what you're saying. Realize that certain shows, like they're doing it, they want that tone. Like it's kind of just, that is the idea, is to not take it too seriously and just have fun with it. And it's not where you want to, like, you don't want to really critique a CW show in that way, especially something like Legends of Tomorrow or The Flash. Is The Flash still going? They are, right?
Yeah, actually, it just started with the whole five arc part. I think it'd be, by the time this airs, there'd be 3 episodes already out, and it's Armageddon, and we get Despero in the first episode.
Oh, nice. So what season is it on? Like 8 or 9 or something? I think I've been out. I haven't watched it since like the 4th season ish. Something around
I think it's 8.
Wow.
I do believe it's 8. And then like growing up with some of these characters too, like I watched Young Justice, the cartoon, and having that character Sportsmaster.
Right.
there and stuff. Like, it was really cool seeing him in Stargirl and seeing him make his first debut appearance live action, and they did him so freaking well, and it was just done so fantastic. Like, if you haven't watched it, there's a scene where he's outside and he's fighting with I think it's who was it with? It was Our Man, the kid Our Man.
Right.
And it was just so well done cinematically.
No, that's cool, man. Yeah, like Stargirl's the one that's the one I'm definitely gonna get on. Like, for sure. I've been saying forever I want to go back and watch season 1 of The Flash again and just kind of get back into that, because it was one of my favorite shows when it was coming out. Like, I loved The Flash.
Yeah, and like, they can say what they want about like how the CGI is and stuff, but like you had an amazing Grodd show up. You had an amazing King Shark show up. Like, it was just so well done. And like, Grodd is like one of my favorites. Like, who doesn't like a monkey? Like, and it's like a smart monkey, telepathic monkey that he has the brute and the mind. So that's a deadly combination.
Right. The part of the thing that it takes, like, I just had to get over about the Flash, like, is how, and it's obvious, like, every problem he solves, like, how can I run my way out of this? Well, if I run circles around it, if I spin my arms like this, it's so stupid, but it's fun. You know what I mean? Like, what else would they do? He's the Flash. Of course he's going to run his way out of every problem. But you know what I mean? They do some creative stuff with it. Definitely.
I did like the whole thinker part. Like, I think that was season 4. It was right after the one where before Iris dies and stuff. I really like that whole aspect of it, like, because like, how would you use one step ahead of them at all times? Like, he couldn't run his way out of this and stuff. He was thinking at double the capacity that the Flash could think. So I really enjoyed that part of it.
Right. No, that's cool. I remember Zoom. I loved Zoom. He was a badass looking villain.
Yeah, Zoom was great, and they brought in the guy that voiced Candyman, didn't they?
Oh, I don't know. Is that who that
use
was?
The voice for Zoom.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I think so. Cool.
I was trying to think.
And then
I was just hearing that he was the voice of somebody, the guy that did Candyman. You know what I'm talking about? I remember hearing it, I was like, oh my God, he was? I don't know. Yeah, I wish it had come to my head. Anyway, it was like some cartoon character. Maybe I should look it up.
And then I won't say the character, but I'm pretty sure it's him. It sounded like him. I got to do some more research, but the guy who was Spawn in the animated series is going to be in Stargirl season 3.
Oh, really?
I won't say the character he's going to play, but yeah, I'm pretty sure that was his voice.
That's cool. I mean, I like nerd culture does that a lot. Like, go and pick this guy. You see it a lot in horror movies too. Like, there was this famous horror icon from the 70s. It's kind of dipped off. Then they'll put him in a movie now, or you know what I mean? Like, little odes to the genre as a whole that I dig. It reminds me of like hip hop. Like, hip hop's always like, you know, people look at samples and stuff as like stealing old stuff, but I look at it as like respect and nods to the past in hip hop. And you see that once you notice it and look at it that way, you see it all over hip hop. And it's interesting to me. I dig it. Who made that behind you, that Spider-Man? I always look at that. Who drew that? Is that like
that?
Yeah.
That is from Walmart.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's cool. I always thought it was like something like you drew or somebody drew, just because of the nature of, you know, with all the, you can tell it's drawn there. That's cool. That's dope.
No, I just saw it at Walmart one time, and that's when I was doing my show with Big Herm, and I wanted a background, and I was just like, you know, I'll just pick up this Spider-Man for Herm.
Right, that works.
So
you're getting the job done.
Exactly. Well, I just want to say thank you for joining me today before we wrap things up. Oh, it's this Spider-Man.
Spider-Man.
Is that from the 90s?
It's what's his name? Tom Holland. Spidey from the new movies. Yep. Whoa. Doink. Stay.
I just want to say thank you again for joining me. It was a great conversation I had with you. The link to the Cerebros Verno is down below to his Instagram and his YouTube. Do you want your podcast one down there too? Because I'll put that one down there too.
Sure. Yeah. I can send you the one-time link. It's the best one to get. I'll send you a good link for it. But yeah, definitely, man. Yeah, I appreciate it. Hey, dude, this was great, man. I'm honored that you had me on. I'm curious, has Nick from Comic Culture been on this show?
He was episode 4, I think.
Fuck. All right. Now I'm not nearly as honored. I was excited. I wanted to be in front of Nick, but to find out that I'm 30 behind him ruined it for me.
You're ahead of John's Comics with Kids. That makes you feel better.
It does. It does. Makes me feel a lot better. Right after Bob from Everything Comics, that makes me feel perfect. I'm following tough shoes to fill for sure.
Yeah. I just want to say thank you again. But the Whiplash Wednesday is continuing. Nick Comic Culture dropping another video because he's overcompensating for something. He'll be dropping his haul video. Then after that is Big Herm Collectibles dropping a haul video or doing something around that nature. You got to tune in and find out. Also, I just want to point out that Big Herm and Fargate are teamed up to do a hashtag Sam to 1K in Heaven video or giveaway. They're giving away some stuff, so go check that out over on his channel. The link is down below. Then Brandon, Comics Kings, and Missing Link, that's Stefan, chop it up about Crisis on Infinite rants this week. What are they ranting about? What are they talking about? Tune in and find out. Then ending the night in fashion, the top head himself, Tomorrow Cinema. What is he doing this week? Who knows? Tune in and find out. Would it be what are you geeking about? What are you watching? What are you reading? Or will it be a creator interview? Tune in and find out. So I want to say thank you again, Verno, for joining me. The last question I have is what are you reading that you recommend to these lovely viewers here?
That's tricky, man. And I knew you were going to ask me this, and I still don't know because there's so much. I'm reading a lot, but I mean, most people that are in, you know what I mean, that watch Rock and Rob, I assume it's a lot of the people that are watching you are watching him, and I've got probably the same. I bet you anything. If you want to do a pick of the pick or pick the pick for Robbie's book of the year, it's going to be The Many Deaths of Layla Starr. That's the best thing I read all year. And Ram V's Swamp Thing. Those are the two best things I can think of. And I'm sure there's a million other things. You know what? I'll go ahead and promote these because I never see anybody talking about this right here. These are these Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips books. This dude right here, it's set in the 80s, and he's a former terrorist, former CIA agent or something along those lines. And he's basically a problem solver. You call this dude, he's in California in the 80s, and he'll solve your problems. And they're putting them out every 4 or 5 months. You're getting these 5-issue series. So it's a unique, different kind of way to read a comic. And if you like Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips from Kill or Be Killed or Criminal or all of the amazing stuff that they've done, it's a no-brainer, and I'm not hearing a whole lot of chatter about it. So I recommend that. And then another one, I don't have it on me, but Friday from Ed Brubaker is another original graphic novel that just came out. That's it's kind of like a Holmes, Sherlock Holmes kind of detective thing, but more geared towards post YA for not YA, but a little bit later for, you know what I mean, for younger people. But I loved it, and I'm 37. So Friday from Ed Brubaker, and then Reckless from Ed Brubaker, which is great. For him to be able to step outside of the system and do his own thing, I think is dope. And they're definitely books worth checking out. So for sure, man. So I appreciate you, man. I want to say before we go that you and Fable and Herm and Steph and you guys are probably just as influential to get me on YouTube as Robbie and all that. To come into the chats and for you guys to be all so friendly it means a lot to a lot of people. It makes it all very inviting, and it adds a lot to the community for sure. So I thank you, brother. You mean a ton to this community.
Station.
Right. And Taki and JT and Sheena and Bobby and everybody, dude. You guys are all awesome. And I love you all. You know what I mean?
It's the best way to do it. Just spread love as much as you can throughout this community, because it just brings more people into the community, which brings more people into comics. And like, because like I said, in like No Goods, like I didn't know that comics were still going. There's a lot of people that still don't. So if, like, we could spread the word, like we can keep this like a growing kind of thing, because like there's new people getting into comics all the time with like either the Marvel movies, DC, CW shows, whether it be that, like there's always new people coming in. So the more welcoming we can be, the better, because they'll want to stick around.
Hell yeah. You guys are doing God's work for sure.
I wouldn't say that.
Well, hey, he might.
And I just want to say, guys, since the holidays, happy holidays to everybody out there. Whatever you celebrate this time of year. I know Brandon is Jewish, so he'll be celebrating Hanukkah. So happy holidays to everybody. Also, are you planning on picking up the new Lemire book? But that I think it's Swamp Thing in Hell.
Ooh, yeah. Yes. With like Mankey on art, the prestige format Black Label DC book. Yes, sir. Super excited about that. Yes.
Yeah, you just mentioned Swamp Thing, and I was just like, I remember seeing that, and I was like, oh, yeah, I'm definitely getting that. That cover, I think it's cover B, just looks fantastic.
Right. Yep. I know exactly what you're talking about. That's the one I want too, dude. For sure. Yeah. Super excited about that. Lemire doing anything is amazing. And I've really just gotten into Swamp Thing in the past year. And he's like one of my favorite characters for sure.
All right. I just want to say thank you again for joining me. That was fantastic. And guys, check him out on his YouTube and Instagram and his podcast, guys. The links are down below. Check out what else the PCP Army Bad Batch has to offer today. Check out the Backlogbros. Who are they? They're somewhere in Russia. Also, check out the people that are friends of the channel. The links are all down below, because we just love to share the love. Station everybody watching. Station Verno. You guys are all worth it.
Station.